Cam Skattebo looks like the running back one for the New York Giants. Wandale Robinson breaks out in the same game. Kenneth Walker is way more productive than Charbonnet. There's a lot to talk about on this week's playbook. Make sure you drop a like if you enjoy the playbook, and make sure you're also subscribed to get all of our content right when it comes out. Let's get into it. Start with Cam Skattebo since I started there. Cam, I did not think it would happen this quickly, but it looks like he is for all intents and purposes, he is the running back one in the Giants' backfield. When you're looking at the snap counts for the Giants running backs this week, Skattebo 35, Tyrone Tracy 28, Devin Singletary 4. But when you're looking at the rushing attempts, it's 11-5 in favor of Skattebo. When you're looking at receiving fantasy points, obviously that's where Tyrone Tracy still kind of makes his mark, right? Cam Skattebo has 3 targets this week. Tyrone Tracy has 5 targets this week. So it's not like we're saying Tyrone Tracy's not going to be involved. But the problem is you drafted Tyrone Tracy probably in the 7th to 8th round in most of your leagues to be a guy that gets all the relevant touches there. And Cam Skattebo actually outscored him today. 13.9 fantasy points in PPR leagues for Cam Skattebo. Looks like he's going to be the running back one there rest of the season if you snagged him in late rounds of drafts. It does look good. Again, it doesn't mean Tracy's dead in the water, but from a utilization standpoint, you do look at what they did for Skattebo coming off of an injury in his second game in the NFL, and now he looks like he runs that backfield. Quite the change and something we're going to have to monitor moving forward in fantasy football.
Yeah, and with Wandale Robinson in the same offense here, I mean, really just reaping the benefits of legit, in terms of production, a career day for Russell Wilson, which was pretty wild. But 10 targets, 8 receptions, 142 yards, and a touchdown. Are we going to expect this every single week in terms of that like production upside? Not necessarily. But I will say it's nice to see an 8 and a 10 targets combination over the first 2 weeks of the season when Russell Wilson is playing quarterback for the Giants. I do think that with Wandale being the pretty much exclusive slot wide receiver there, he's essentially Khalil Shakir, but he's more explosive, and he does have bigger play upside ability. He can get some of those deep targets from Russ. So I am encouraged. Again, Wandale was kind of a top waiver pickup last week for a lot of people in fantasy leagues. If he's left or available on your waivers, you obviously want to drop a large amount of your waiver budget on Wandale because he's looking to be a flexible option week in and week out at the moment. But I think it's pretty positive from here on out for Wandale as long as Russ is the quarterback there.
If you take a look at this chart, it looks like Zach Charbonnet is the running back one for the Seahawks. When you're looking at all plays, he outsnapped Kenneth Walker this week, 36-23 on early downs and short yardage, on third downs in the 2-minute drill. It's Zach Charbonnet, right? Wrong. Let's look at the production for this week. Obviously, utilization goes to Zach Charbonnet, but when you're looking at fantasy points, 13 and 15 carries for Walker and Charbonnet respectively, and then 18.8 and 1 fantasy points for these two guys. Straight up, these guys got the same amount of volume. Charbonnet actually got more volume, and he looked significantly worse than Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker was 10, 15-yard chunk plays pretty much all day. Obviously, he had a touchdown as well. He only had 1 target. Charbonnet had 0 targets. And so really what it came down to is their efficiency on the ground, and Kenneth Walker just blew him out of the water. It doesn't mean you're going to feel comfortable starting Kenneth Walker every week from now on, but it does mean that Kenneth Walker did prove to me, at least today, that he can be the better back in this backfield, and maybe next week they'll reward him with more carries to go with it. As of right now, though, we still pretty much have no idea. It looks like they like Charbonnet more, but Kenneth Walker does look better as of this week. We'll see what happens moving forward there.
I think it's going to be hard to predict for the rest of the season, personally. Yeah. Travis Etienne and Bhayshul Tuten is going to be something to continue to monitor and follow over the next few weeks because, look, admittedly, when you're talking about like trajectory in terms of usage, this definitely resembles a Bucky Irving and Rachaad White thing last season in Tampa Bay, where Bucky had like not a ton of usage, but relevant enough where you're like, oh, he could start getting an increased amount of workload. And then down the line, he ends up being, the main guy there. The difference is Travis Etienne is actually a lot more efficient, and he's getting a higher floor in terms of usage week in and week out to start the season. And that's why I'm not necessarily panicking about Travis Etienne. We're going to talk about him in some other videos this week as well. But just looking at the usage here, Bhayshul Tuten basically absorbed Tank Bigsby's volume when Tank Bigsby was with Jacksonville in week 1. So you're going to see the box score. If you're a box score reader, you're like, oh, Etienne had 16, Bhayshul Tuten had 15. He's taken away 15 points from Travis Etienne. That's not necessarily true. You basically just had a red zone. You had a red zone series with Tuten where he got a reception, had a nice little shifty whoop, and got a touchdown, which was really nice. And Travis Etienne basically did the same thing the following series. But you're looking at the volume there. Etienne had 14 carries, Tuten had 8. And short yardage, early downs, total plays, 2-minute drills. Etienne had the upper hand literally everywhere. And LaKeen Allen, just like we saw in week 1, had like all of the third down snaps, almost all of them. Yeah, so Tuten, in terms of his floor, is definitely like the odd man out here when you're talking about Etienne versus Tuten. So if you're going to get an overpay for Tuten in your league, I would potentially explore that. But if you dropped your whole waiver budget on Tuten, at least it's justified at this point. I just wouldn't expect 15 points every single game from here on out from Tuten unless Etienne gets injured or he continues to increase his workload when you're looking at the total snaps and the opportunities there in that offense.
Ladies and gentlemen, Romeo Doubs has arrived. Long knucks.
Bang.
32 PPR points for Romeo Doubs today. Obviously, we were huge Romeo Doubs guys during the offseason. We said he was going to be the wide receiver 1 in Chicago, and he is the wide receiver 1 in Chicago. When you're looking at a production standpoint, he obviously outscores DJ Moore by 20 points. When you're looking at a target standpoint, this week he out-targets DJ Moore by 5. Last week, I think he out-targeted DJ Moore by 3 or 4. He's clearly the number one guy there, and he's clearly the focal point of that offense. When you're looking at how they're featuring him in the sets that Ben Johnson is running for him, he's not only the best wide receiver there, but he is who they're running their offense through. And it shows in his fantasy production. He had 11 targets, 128 yards, and 2 touchdowns today. Romeo Doubs is the truth. He was a steal where you were getting him. He went in the top 10 of the NFL draft for a reason, and now rest of the season, if you drafted Romeo Doubs where you did, you have a surefire wide receiver 1 every single week. This guy is the truth. He's going to have down weeks, of course, but in a game where the Bears pretty much got blown out by the Lions, you had Romeo Doubs dropping 32 points. It was the lone bright spot for that team. I'm very excited. He's very excited. You're very excited. We're all very excited about Romeo Doubs.
I'm not as excited about Rhamondre Stevenson getting all of this usage in New England. And again, this is not an anti-Rhamondre bit. I mean, if you were a Rhamondre investor and you wanted to get him as a handcuff potentially with Henderson, you're looking at starting Rhamondre over Henderson for the foreseeable future because you actually saw a step back this week with Henderson in terms of his overall usage, with Gibson even taking away a little bit. Henderson had, when you're looking at total plays, he only had 11 total plays where he had any chance of getting any opportunity on the ground whatsoever. 10 snaps on early downs compared to Rhamondre Stevenson's 21. They split the goal line carries. You had no short yardage opportunities for Henderson. It was split between Rhamondre and Gibson, and no third down opportunities for TreyVeon Henderson at all this game. And what was a higher scoring game where you would have hoped that someone like Henderson would kind of break out against what is looking to be one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Unfortunately, it is probably going to take a little more time before we really can see what Henderson is capable of in this offense. And I honestly, if I had a crystal ball and I was able to predict when this would be, I would do it for you, but I just don't. Again, 35% snap share in week 1 against Vegas. It's not going to be any better against Miami this week. So until that usage goes up, again, very similar to Tuten, you just have such a low floor where Henderson, you're not even comfortable flexing him because of the floor that he potentially has in this offense at the moment. So not super encouraged. I do expect his usage to go up over time. It's just a matter of when.
It does look like Jaylen Warren is going to be at least somewhat fantasy productive every week as the Steelers running back 1 for a couple reasons. Number one, he got a larger majority of the snaps there this week when you're looking at the running back usage for the Steelers. All plays, Jaylen Warren 33 to Kenneth Gainwell's 23. It's pretty much Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, but Jaylen Warren is now Najee Harris, and Kenneth Gainwell is now Jaylen Warren is what's happening here, right? Warren's obviously the early down back. Obviously, Kenneth Gainwell got some goal line carries, but short yardage, third down, 2-minute drill, it was either split or it went Jaylen Warren's way. And so with Warren, I mean, obviously, it's worth noting that, again, 12.6% of his, or 12.6 points of his 17 points this week came from receiving. I mean, 4 targets, 4 receptions, 86 yards, and he had a touchdown again. It's pretty much what he did in week 1. But at this point, he does it twice in a row. You can't really ignore it. You probably are going to have to flex him. It looks like you're going to have to flex him. He does have a better quarterback than he's had in the past with Aaron Rodgers, who looks a little bit more serviceable than what we've seen there in Pittsburgh. And so for Warren, I think he becomes somebody that you have to put in your last flex spot every single week. Kenneth Gainwell is definitely not relevant. And then Caleb Johnson, on the other hand, 2 snaps. He was in the field for a kickoff, and he gave up a touchdown, and did not end well for the Pittsburgh Steelers at all. And so in terms of the running back room there, it looks like it's going to be Jaylen Warren for the foreseeable future. Depending on how cheap he is, you might be able to buy him low. I mean, people still, I think, look at that, and it's very ugly. But while it is ugly, it does look like he's going to be the guy there most weeks.
Buckle up, folks. This ain't going to be a 3-back committee in Cleveland for long because Quinshon Judkins comes back. He wasn't even there to begin with. Has 2 practices with his NFL team this week. Like, for the first time he's practicing with his team, he gets 19 snaps. They said he was going to get 10 to 15. They gave him 19. He had some garbage time snaps, granted. Finished with 10 fantasy points, which was the same as Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson. Interestingly enough, he outsnapped Dylan Sampson. He had 1 more snap on the field than Dylan Sampson did. Jerome Ford had 35 to Quinshon's 19. I mean, I would expect this usage for Quinshon to flip with Jerome Ford as early as week 3 with that usage, and even some of the receiving opportunities that he got. I think he got, 3 targets? Yeah, 3 targets, 3 receptions for 10 yards, nothing pretty there, but 10 carries for 61 yards, very efficient on the ground. Again, this was an early second-round pick for the Cleveland Browns, so they're going to want this to return on investment as soon as possible. When you have guys like Ford and Sampson backing him up, it's not like they have a crazy amount of upside in their own right. I think Judkins is going to be the guy here long-term, and I think you're going to see his usage increase incrementally from here on out. And it's going to be pretty dramatic. So I'm pumped because I obviously have a ton of rooting interest in Quinshon in the Flock League.
Thursday night, you saw the game of Tucker Kraft. The number one storyline in that game was, of course, Tucker Kraft, who last year was second among tight ends in yards per route run, one of the most efficient on a per-catch basis, on a per-target basis, on a per-reception basis, top 3 last year efficient in terms of per-catch, per-target, per route. But the problem was what? In terms of the targets. He had 70 targets last year, was 18th among tight ends, 19th target share. So they weren't getting the ball enough. But this year, so far, in weeks 1 and 2, they are getting him the ball more. And that really was the missing piece for Tucker Kraft. You saw that in week 2 against the Washington Commanders on Thursday Night Football. Now, you're not going to see Tucker Kraft come out every single week and have these big, long, huge plays that rack up his fantasy points and have him finish with 24. But I do think you're talking about a 10 to 12 point floor for Tucker Kraft if he does continue to get the volume and the target share. In a wide receiver room there in Green Bay where really you don't have a super dominant guy. Doubs had 5 targets. Wicks had 6 targets. Heath had 1 target. Golden had 2 targets. And then, on the tight end side, it's Kraft at 6 targets. He makes the most of it because he catches all of them. He has 124 yards and a touchdown. I have Tucker Kraft ranked as my tight end 5 rest of the season, and I don't think that's aggressive. I don't think it's out there. It does look like, again, because he's getting the volume that he needed to get last year and because he's just as efficient as he's always been in a great offense, mind you, in an offense where there are no dominant receivers, it looks like he could end up being a very good fantasy football pick where you got him this year in like the 10th, 11th round.
Heading into week 2, during our primer video, I had 3 sits. I had Zach Charbonnet, check. Stephon Diggs, check. Jaylen Waddle, oh boy, that was pretty rough. A high-scoring game that I don't think any of us saw coming. This was expected to be one of the uglier games in terms of offensive production on both sides, and Waddle goes out there as the wide receiver 2 alongside Tyreek Hill. Both of these guys produce. It looks like what you saw a couple years back. Honestly, it doesn't. It still doesn't. Tyreek Hill, 16 points. Jaylen Waddle, 17 points. Waddle had 17 points on 6 receptions. He was just efficient with his opportunity. 68 yards, and he was able to haul in a touchdown. So I wouldn't freak too much about Jaylen Waddle and say, oh, he's back, because that volume, along with Tyreek Hill's, which was only 7 targets as well, they combined for 13 targets. They were getting 13 targets apiece a couple years ago when this offense was looking super explosive. Etienne, honestly, the star of the day, with 10 targets himself. He out-targeted Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle. So I think with Waddle, you do got to be happy that, hey, if you flexed him, a lot of people had to flex him heading into this week. You're like, okay, this is what I needed from them. This is what I wanted from them. This is what I was expecting. Some boom bust weeks, and the better weeks are 17, 15 plus point games from Jaylen Waddle. Hopefully we can see more of this as the season progresses for the Miami Dolphins. Maybe they've just started to figure it out. And as long as he's getting red zone targets, I think we're going to be A-okay with Jaylen Waddle. Again, it's just going to be a matter of time for us to really figure out how consistently will those red zone opportunities come for him.
So let's cover some injuries for you now. Let's start with Joe Burrow. Obviously, this is the biggest injury. It's going to be the biggest headline from the NFL this week. We're learning a lot of new information. We're going to know more tomorrow, even when this video is out. But right now, what we're hearing is that he could be out for 3 months. It sounds like he has some kind of level 3, grade 3 turf toe, something other with ligament tears. I'm not a doctor, so don't ask me. All we know is it doesn't sound great for Joe Burrow. And at the point where it does put him out this long, it obviously is going to impact, Joe Burrow fantasy owners quite a bit, but also Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown owners as well. We'll talk about that in all of our videos the next couple days, so make sure you're subscribed so you get those videos as soon as they come out. Other quarterback, Justin Fields, pretty much the same caliber of quarterback here. Justin Fields leaves the game with a concussion. And the protocol for that is going to be 1 to 3 weeks probably, depending on how severe the concussion is. In terms of how it affects the Jets, obviously the Jets today did not do them any favors that Justin Fields left that game. I'm also not sure it would have mattered in this game against the Bills.
Garrett Wilson, almost all of his production came after Justin Fields left the game.
And that's not saying much because he only had 9 points.
I know.
So
he had 2 before Justin Fields left the game.
They all really kind of sucked today. It does. I think this will, at least short term, hurt Garrett Wilson quite a bit. I do think as well it probably hurts Breece Hall. You saw Breece Hall, even though he had the lion's share of that backfield today, it's probably going to hurt him. He only had 5.8 points. And again, anytime
I'm
you're
interested. Do you think it hurts Garrett Wilson?
Yeah. Without Fields? Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys can let us know in the chat if you think so. I think it definitely hurts Garrett Wilson a little bit. I mean, I think Justin Fields can get him the ball better than, any other option there. Who was the backup that came in?
Tyrod.
Yeah, so, I mean...
I think Tyrod will be fine.
Tyrod's not bad, but I don't think Tyrod's going to support Garrett Wilson like Justin Fields could. Justin Fields actually... We saw what Justin Fields can do with Garrett Wilson. I don't think you're going to see that.
The second game I saw it too.
Yeah.
Which was pretty rough,
how much did he actually play? He went
Fields,
out in the second quarter?
In the second half.
Oh, he played the first half.
Yeah, a lot of that production from Garrett Wilson came in the fourth quarter after Fields left because I think he left.
Okay. Well, so it was garbage.
Early
so it was
fourth
garbage
like
time
that.
essentially because the Bills were up 40 points. So regardless, you can let us know who you think it affects, but it is going to be an interesting one. We'll go with our waivers for this week, and I'll let you cover both of our top prospects, both from the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, so Thursday night, a lot of craziness happened, not just in the Flock League, but in terms of news there. Austin Eckler going down with that Achilles injury. Really feel for him. I mean, for a guy that was a premier fantasy running back for so long, it was sad to see him go down. But with Jeremy McNichols, he's just the next man up here behind Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, and he was the guy that wasn't the healthy scratch week in and week out. Chris Rodriguez was in the first 2 weeks of the season while Eckler was healthy. So really just by default here, that makes McNichols the second option there behind Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt / maybe a 50-50 split there until Krosky-Merritt can really get more efficient with his opportunity. But we're going to have you drop like 10 to 20% of your waiver budget on him, and actually he's going to be like 1A, 1B here in terms of priority because we love Zach Ertz as well. Zach Ertz, in his stint with Washington, has been really, really solid. I mean, tight end 7 last year and what was an unexpected season for him at 34 years old right now. He's picking up right where he left off last year. He's had multiple productive games with Jaden Daniels, and that's really just continued on. Really, a big part of it is his red zone usage. He's kind of a go-to red zone option for Jaden Daniels, and he's just consistently been that, but he's not dependent necessarily on those touchdowns to be hyper productive. So that's important to note because he does have a nice floor, which is why we're going to allocate like 10 to 20% of our waiver budget on Zach Ertz as well. 8 targets in week 2 against Green Bay, which is a really stout defense. 5 targets, 3 receptions, and a touchdown against the Giants in week 1. So again, with this usage continuing on for a guy that was not only dirt cheap, he was free. A lot of times you weren't seeing him being drafted in your fantasy drafts heading into this season. He's a guy that's definitely worth picking up on waivers.
Our third waiver option of the week is going to be Troy Franklin, second-year wide receiver out of Oregon who's playing for the Broncos. And, the context here behind his 24-point day, which he did have 9 targets, caught 8 of those, 89 yards. He could be breaking out here. He obviously had 6 targets in week 1, and it looks better than he did last year. His snap share's up, obviously. The context, though, here is the Colts were down to like their 6th or 7th string cornerback. That's exaggerating, but literally I think they had 2 or 3 cornerbacks out today.
Yeah,
and so, you're talking about a bad Colts secondary and the backups to the bad Colts secondary. So that's the context. And the thing with Troy Franklin is, while I do think he could have a pretty consistent role there, especially if Evan Ingram, who today had 2 targets, I mean,
a lot of snap share,
pretty much invisible, making me look like an idiot for believing in him. I mean, an absolute idiot. Troy Franklin, he could continue to be that guy. And so because of the upside that he does potentially offer, we are going to say you can go anywhere from 5 to 15% on Troy Franklin. Personally, Nathan and I think Troy Franklin is a little bit of fool's gold. I think he's got a super low floor. I don't think you're going to want to start him on a week-to-week basis anyways. And again, I don't think he's somebody that's going to carve out a very consistent role in the NFL. And I think the defensive competition is almost always going to be tougher than it was in week 2. Again, we watched the entire game. They were running him in a bunch of drag routes, and the cornerbacks are stupid, and Lou's defense kind of sucked, and they really couldn't do anything because, who's guarding him? That's really the point I'm trying to make. And so with Franklin, though, he could be our number 1 waiver target if you want to put him there, and I'd be totally fine with that because he does offer more upside as from a wide receiver standpoint than almost anybody on this list, except for one guy that I'm going to talk about next. So with Franklin, 5 to 15% of your waiver budget, you should be fine. Again, we don't love him, but I understand why you do it. If you want to take a shot on him, this is probably the appropriate amount you should allocate of your fab. So
Juwan Johnson's going to be our next guy here. He's kind of a guy that honestly just kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit, admittedly, after week 1. Like, we knew that he had a big week with Spencer Rattler and that volume there. But honestly, we just didn't really know what to think about it in terms of like, hey, was this actually going to continue on? Was he going to be able to sustain this over multiple weeks? And it looks like he is going to be able to, because when you're looking at the snap counts there, he's constantly on the field. Chris Olave was 71 snaps. He was on there every snap of the game on offense. Juwan Johnson right behind him was 68. No one else in that offense was even remotely close at the wide receiver position with Shaheed and Cooks, Vele. They were all a step down. So Juwan Johnson seems to be a go-to there in terms of, hey, he's going to get opportunity on the field. He's going to get targets, because Spencer Rattler in the first 2 weeks of the season with that volume is just throwing the crap out of the ball. 46 attempts against Arizona, 34 attempts against San Francisco. The reason I think this is sustainable is because the Saints are looking like one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. And sometimes the passing volume, not sometimes, a lot of times, the passing volume for the worst teams in the NFL are very, very high. So some of your like nice contested catch opportunity guys like a Juwan Johnson, a tight end, where you're not going to have like any crazy playmakers, because again, they're the worst team in the league for a reason. But Spencer Rattler isn't going to be like insane and make these elite reads and throw these guys open. He's just going to probably throw jump balls to Juwan Johnson and throw the ball to someone who's wide open, which is going to be Chris Olave.
Yeah.
So in a Kellen Moore offense where we've seen historically he loves chucking the ball, I do think that Juwan Johnson's volume is actually going to be sustainable. It's just a matter of, is he going to continue to get these touchdowns? That's when his floor is kind of lowered a little bit. So we'll go 5 to 10% with Juwan Johnson. If you're streaming tight end, he's definitely your go-to for sure.
The two other wide receivers with upside on this list that you could spend 5 to 10% of your waiver budget on. I'll start with Elic Ayomanor, who in week 2 had 6 targets, caught 4 of them, had a touchdown. Obviously, the insane Cam Ward throw. I mean, just that was disgusting.
Absolutely ridiculous.
I mean, Cam Ward is what everybody wanted Caleb Williams to be. I'm just saying.
Yep.
People are gonna get so mad about that. 48 snaps. I think honestly, it's pretty clear that he's the wide receiver 2 there from a utilization standpoint, targets and snaps. But then 15.5 points for him this week. Obviously, he has the touchdown, and that's going to drive him up. So this is another guy where it's a wide receiver 2 in a pretty below average offense. And so I do think with Elic Ayomanor, I don't think he's going to be somebody you're plugging in. I don't think he's going to be a consistent fantasy starter. 5 to 10% is the upside shot, but at that point, that's what you're paying for is upside. You're not paying for him to come, start in your lineup unless he really does develop into something that we really don't see coming. Analytically as a prospect, we were kind of out on Elic at the end of the day. We loved his film. He's a great blocker, but in terms of actually making fantasy football plays, without that touchdown today, I mean, you've got him under 10 points, but you can't ignore the volume. And again, he did have 6 targets, and that's worth mentioning. And so he has upside. Hunter Renfrow, you could say, has upside as well. I think there's a lot of fool's gold this week. I think there's a lot of fool's gold on the waiver wire, to be honest with you. He had 2 touchdowns, and part of it was because the Panthers got down 70 points and then threw the ball a million times after that. And I know those aren't the real numbers, but my point is, they were literally, Bryce was literally just slinging it, and Hunter Renfrow just got a bunch of targets from it. Now, it doesn't take away from the fact that Hunter Renfrow in his first couple games in the NFL had 6 targets last week, has 9 this week, nice. And when you're looking at him compared to the other wide receivers, obviously, T-Max got 72 snaps, so he's the leading snap guy. And then it's Leggett and Renfrow as the wide receiver 2 and 3. When Coker comes back, though, I do think it's probably going to cut into what you're seeing from Hunter Renfrow's production right now. But this week, 24 points, 9 targets, 7 receptions, only 48 yards on 9 targets, though. So from a yards per target, a fantasy points per target and a yards per target standpoint, it's not fantastic. Receiving touchdowns, again, will drive up your score and will lead to more volatile weeks. I think that's what you're going to see with Hunter Renfrow here. But he does have some upside. He's a wide receiver that has been a wide receiver 2 in the past, wide receiver 1. He had a wide receiver 1 season, didn't he? Mm-hmm. So
a high-end wide receiver 2.
So I think you're correct. So he has more upside than some of the guys on this list, but at the end of the day, I don't think he's going to develop into a consistent fantasy starter. You'd be shooting
11.
You'd be shooting for low end wide receiver 1. You'd be shooting for upside with those guys, and then the 2.5 or 2 to 5 percenters / just go through all of them.
Yeah, a few guys here. Chris Rodriguez, basically insert everything I said about McNichols and apply third option, not second option, 2 to 5% with Rodriguez. He's been a healthy scratch for the first 2 weeks. He's not going to be getting a ton of volume there. But if you want to take the shot there with a potential future injury, or if McNichols is just garbage, that's possible. Romeo Doubs, basically Golden's just not getting targets, and Jaden Reed is hurt. And he had a touchdown on Thursday night against Washington. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. I think we've kind of played this game with Romeo Doubs plenty of times in his first couple seasons at the NFL level, and I'm not expecting anything consistent coming out of a Doubs investment where you're comfortable flexing him like week in and week out. Blake Corum, 2 to 5% as well. I honestly think is an insurance play to pair with Kyren Williams. I don't know what the heck was going on with Corum getting those touches over Kyren. If I'm being completely honest, towards the end of that game, the Rams knew they had the dub in the bag, so they were like, let's just give the ball to Blake. Let's just give him some snaps. We don't need to waste Kyron's legs. We can save him for more competitive games. That's my personal take on it. And then Tez Walker had 2 touchdowns today against Cleveland. That whole game plan was so screwy. Derrick Henry scored freaking 2.3 points. I have him in the Flock League. I was losing my mind. They're like, oh, goal line at the 1 yard line? Derrick Henry, who are you? Throw it to Tez Walker instead. We're going to go 0 to 2% for him. There's just not enough volume there consistently from multiple receivers to be productive there. It's Flowers, and then it's everyone else, and it's anyone's guess who it's going to be week in and week out.
I would say 0%. I wouldn't drop $1.
That's what I said, 0 to 2%.
No,
okay.
not even 2. Not even 2. I'd go 0%.
Yeah.
If you have a deep league, maybe.
We're just acknowledging him.
All right, so obviously week 2 was a banger. Make sure you drop a like, be subscribed, because tomorrow morning we're going to have our buys video, and we'll have our panic video tomorrow as well. So we're going to have 2 new videos talking about guys you should buy low on in fantasy football, and then, of course, guys you should probably freak out on in fantasy football as well. So make sure you subscribe, turn those notifications on. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you soon.